Kia ora and welcome. My name is Ellen Rose and this is the Creative Cure to Boredom. I've created this channel to explore and share some creative approaches to art using everyday materials you can find in your own home. The hope is that this makes the current lockdown and isolation situation just a little bit more bearable. Today we're going to have a bit of an experiment with using berries as ink and using erasers or rubbers as a printing tool. I will put a warning out there though, this video does involve knives, so if you're not comfortable with knives, please don't attempt the activity. And if you're a bit squirmish around knives, maybe this video isn't for you. Hope you enjoy. So I'm just doing a quick outline of my drawing onto the eraser. I've decided to go with a beetle. You can use wood carving tools for this. Any print carving tools would be easier and safer to use. However, I'm doing this video with household equipment, so I've decided to use a kitchen knife for this experiment. Essentially, I'm following the inside of each black line I drew with the knife, so I'm just scoring the eraser. I'm trying to remove the white bits of the eraser, so I'm removing any of the negative space so that the black lines end up being the highest. You'll notice I'm always trying to cut away from me. I'm using small, gentle movements, using the knife to score the material, my fingers to remove it. I'm also using the knife to cut around the form, so I end up with a beetle-shaped stamp. With the smaller details, I'm taking out rice-sized segments of eraser too. This will establish some of the shadow lines, especially on the back of the shell. I want that real sort of liney marking. You can see I'm using the knife first to cut around the shapes that I want to use, and then I'm using it to sort of try to cut through it a little bit. So just trying to cut a bit into the eraser so then I can ply it out with my fingers. And I would suggest cutting around the shape after you've actually cut out the detail within it. Some of those limbs got a little bit fragile in the process, so I'm glad that I decided to remove most of the inside before I did that. Might not look like it, but I am trying to be quite precious with this. And once I'm happy with my beetle stamp, it's time for the ink. So for the ink, I'm using blackberries and blueberries. I put them into a teapot strainer, any strainer will do, and I'm pressing against them with a spoon. I want a thick, dark juice to come out. I've also added half a teaspoon of vinegar to help the juice stick to the paper, and half a teaspoon of salt to stop the berry juice from doing anything funky like going mouldy. My first attempts, I was a little disappointed with. I didn't feel they were showing the full detail of the stamp. So I added some blue food dye to the side and I decided to give it a go with a more artificial material. And the image was a lot more clear. So I lastly decided to try to mix the two together in the hope of getting the best from both worlds. So getting the clarity from the artificial dye and then getting some beautiful pigments with the natural dye. So when I dried the work, I was surprised how dark the berry colours actually came up when they dried. When I was doing it, they looked quite pale. So I realised perhaps I was being a bit heavy-handed with the berry prints. I was sort of going more berry juice on there would be a darker colour, and in fact it was more berry juice on there was messier. So I went back and tried a few more, being slightly more conservative with how much I put on. So I'm very glad I decided to go back and try the berries for a second time. I was much happier with the results. They ended up just as clear, if not more clear, than the food dyes, and had this beautiful range of pink and purple hues. I do prefer to use natural materials when I can, so this was a great discovery for me. I'll definitely be using berry dyes again. A few of the prints obviously turned out better than others. And that's sort of a natural part of the printing process, I guess. And as I say, this is the first time for me with this process. I do think that the detail in the beetle was spot on for what I actually wanted. You get a beautiful idea of light and shade with what is there. Like I said at the start of the video, if you're not comfortable with knives, maybe this isn't the activity for you. And if you have carving tools, do use them. This activity would be a lot easier with carving tools than with a knife, as you'll have a lot more control over them. I quite liked the process of using rubber, but I'd really like to hear how you went with this activity, from berries to ink and erasers to print. So please do leave your comments and suggestions below. This has been the Creative Cure to Boredom with Ellen Rose. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Till next time, ngā mihi nui.